What's up? How you doing? Beautiful day today. Beautiful day, just a perfect temperature, perfect humidity, and we have a slight breeze, about 2 miles per hour, and it feels fantastic once it arrives. I see it there, I see the leaves moving, and then, I don't know, about 8 seconds later I feel it. Oh, it's a great feeling. Very little humidity. Anyway, I'm a big fan of tape measures, anything associated with that. I don't know, for some reason I want to know how big things are. I want to know how far things are. So I got one of these 12 footers. This one is inches and centimeters. Has a good, spring system in there. Eventually I will break it. There is not one of these that I have bought that has lasted more than a couple of weeks. If I keep messing with it, if I leave it in a shelf or on a shelf, it'll last forever because I won't be touching it. But if I keep, messing around with it, 2 weeks tops, it'll break. Sometimes if you can't sleep at night, and this is my remedy for insomnia. Everybody has their own little remedy. My remedy is if you can't sleep at night, you get up, walk around the neighborhood and measure things. Measure the fire hydrant, measure length of cars, measure the length of fences, the height of fences, height of steps. And then you get all, I'm tired of doing this. You go back to bed and you sleep instamatically. So highly recommend one of these if you have insomnia. But I also, this is my favorite. Lufkin. Love that. So I mainly am a big fan of this because of my father. My father had one of these at all times. It was his profession. He didn't just carry it around for no reason. So he had one very broken in, very old. His was from 1966. So here they have a little extender. See that? It'll extend a little bit more. Say the object is a little bit longer or embedded into something. This will go in and you get another 6 inches. So this whole thing is 6 feet, and this extra thing here makes it 6 feet 6 inches. And in here there is a groove. And my father, I have stuff here, they're gonna fall. My father had written his name in there so nobody would steal it. That would stop them. But anyway, my father had written his name in there, and he put the date that he bought this, and his name 1966. 1966, had the same one. Never lost it, no one stole it. And I was, at first I was like, why don't you use a tape measure? They're longer, 25 footers, 50 footers. And he said unnecessary. What we cut, this does the job. And so he always had one of these. And now I carry one. You never know. And not only that, they're very stable. Very stable. I had a book, Grover, sorry, wrong guy. Grover, and he was doing some carpentry in there, and he had one of these. So I've always been a fan of these Lufkin wooden ones. They even make a tape measure. This company makes all kind of measures. Tape, metal, rulers, yardsticks. That's how it is. So the metric system, speak about that for a second. I know, it's more logical to use the metric system. It's based on logic, it's easy. I don't know why in this country we never adopted it. There's a reason, I'm sure if I look it up on Wikipedia, it'll tell me. But I remember when I was in school, and that year they did a push. We had to convert to metric, the metric system. And everybody I knew was resisting. They're like, we're American, we're born in the USA, we don't want that. They were all angry. And my teacher was like, we have to learn this, we have to learn it. And the problem is, and I've mentioned other times, but the problem is with me, I can visualize my system. Pounds, miles, I can visualize how far about a mile is, or how much how much metal equals to 10 pounds or 20 pounds or whatever. I don't have to sit there and convert it in my head and all that. It's instantaneous or instamatic. So that's the problem, I think. I think, maybe the new kids, if they were born into a system like the kindergartners, when I was, already in 5th, 6th grade, they should have said, okay, it's over for them. They're too old. But the kindergartners, we should start teaching them the metric system from now. Then that way, by now, all these years later, we would be on the metric system. Some things are, right? Some things are, but you don't buy a gallon of Coke. You don't buy a gallon of Coke, so that one is in the metric system. You buy a liter. Wine, you don't buy like a quart of wine. So some things are, but for me it's a visual thing. I do appreciate the metric system in terms of the logic that it's based on. But I prefer, what is ours called? I know there's a name. There's a name for ours. Can't think of it right now because we don't use that name that often. But anyway, our system is it's one of those things. Like, say you speak 2 languages, right? You know which one is the dominant language. It's the one you think in, right? So if you speak, like English and you speak Portuguese, right? The language that you think in when you're in your brain thinking, that's the language that is the dominant one, the one that you're better at. So anyway, that's it. You don't get a guy who came from Italy like 5 years ago and just learned English, but his first language was Italian. All of a sudden, because he's here, he doesn't think in his own brain with an English-speaking voice. LAPD again. All right, you found me right here. Anyway, we move on from that. Like I said, I will reiterate that I do appreciate the logic of the metric system. Very logical. But I prefer our system. And I can't think of what it's called. Anyway, I'll look it up and then I'll know. But anyway. So, I have these little posters here. I'll talk about them briefly, or not briefly, but this is the menu from the Union Oyster House in Boston, Massachusetts. Look at that. So it says the iconic Boston landmark, the Union Oyster House, has been doing continuous business since 1826. It's a long time. With the same stalls and oyster bars in their original positions. So I do believe that, I don't know if it says it here, but I do believe that Ben Franklin used to have meals there. It says here, former President JFK, John F. Kennedy, was a regular at the restaurant and still has a booth there that is dedicated in his memory, or to his memory. Let me see, does it say anything? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Ben Franklin had, meals there. So in the back it has the menu, and they make awesome seafood. Awesome seafood. Clam chowder is great. Lobster, halibut, piranha. They don't have piranha, I'm kidding. So anyway, that's that. And we have another one here. This is Dan Tanner's, 9071 Santa Monica Boulevard. Look at that. Dan Tanner's. So this is a restaurant I have never, ever, ever eaten at or in or on. I have never eaten inside of this place. And we always talk about going. And my bride says, oh yeah, we should go. Gotta make it I was gonna say an appointment there, but they're not doctors. Have to make a rendezvous, have to make a reservation there. And apparently I don't think you can just walk off the street and just go in there. They want you to call up, they want you to put something, you know, nice and go and eat at Dan Tana's. So, and I pass by there quite often. As a matter of fact, many years ago I got this close to going into Dan Tana's. I went into the Troubadour and I watched a concert there, but never actually made it into Dan Tana's. So that's on my list of places to go and eat. Great Italian food. You should check them out on the internet. I'm sure they have a website like everybody else. Dan Tana's. I mean, I'm pretty full right now, but if I didn't eat not too long ago, I would be going to Dan Tana's. Next, this is a great company. Was a great company. I never thought this thing would go under. If you came to me, it's like Sears. I never thought Sears would be going out of business. When I was a kid, Sears was dominant. Sears was like the king of the department stores, the king of every store. So, as you can see that, Pan Am, 1940s. I have to take this apart, but inside here they have the menus, you know, 50-cent drinks. Pan Am. And they had this place that I got these from. They have, they couldn't find it, otherwise I would have bought it. TWA. TWA, my favorite airliner. Pan Am was a very close second. Beatles came on Pan Am in 1964. Now, who would have thought Pan Am and TWA would not exist today? And things like Alaska Airlines and what's the other one, Southwest, would exist. But these awesome airliners, TWA and Pan Am, would no longer be around. It's a weird thing. So I got a story about this next one here. So, Air France brings back memories to me. So, when I was little, we went over to Europe on a family vacation. My father brought his car. Father actually brought his car, had a station wagon. My father was so attached to the station wagon that he brought it with him on a vacation. We went on vacation and he put it on a ship and he came to Europe. So anyway, that trip was a blast. I remember like it was yesterday, even though I was little. And we had a really good time. We went all over the place with that station wagon. At one point, my father was able to stuff 15 people into that station wagon and go for a ride. 15 people. Now, they're not designed for 15. Maybe they were designed for, like what, 9 people, right, if you had the back seat. But we put 15 in there. So, my father ended up leaving a little before us because he was going to come back by boat, by ship, to New York. And we stayed an additional week, and then the following, like, the plane lands, right, and the very next day school began for me. So I was a first grader, was going into school, first grade. So anyway, we leave and we land in Paris to change planes, or something happened, we had to land in Paris. And I was little back then, and you know, when you're little, hours seem like days. They drag and drag, especially when you're not having fun. And I remember they kept delaying the plane, and it was me, my mother, and my sister, and we were just waiting there, and we didn't know what was happening. And my mother was like upset with the what do they call in those days, the ticket agency. She was like, when I get back, they're gonna hear an earful or a mouthful, one or the other. Figure which one she was gonna do. And so anyway, we were there. We stayed in Paris 12 hours. 12 hours. We were supposed to leave on TWA. Something had happened, and they switched us out, and they put us on Air France. Air France. And we get on Air France, and it had nice wallpaper. It was very fancy. You know, the French made it fancier than TWA looked like inside. So my mother gets in, and we sit down, and we're all happy. We're flying back. And throughout the trip, all I could hear my mother saying, I've never been on a plane this big before. This is like the biggest plane I've ever been on. The biggest. I'm thinking, aren't they all 747s, you know, unless they're longer or shorter or whatever, because they have different variations. But the TWA that we flew over on was exactly the same size. And years, she doesn't say it anymore. I guess she forgot that she experienced that trip on Air France. But up until maybe 15, 20 years ago, she would say that biggest airplane I've ever been on was Air France. I've never been on a plane that big ever since. So now she doesn't say it anymore. I think she forgot about it. But yeah, it wasn't any bigger than it was a Boeing 747. Now it might have been longer, but she didn't know that. It's not like my mother jogged around the plane or something. So anyway, we got stuck in Paris for 12 hours. And when you're a kid, 12 hours seems like 3 days. So anyway, yeah, that's what happened. And that's why I bought that. It's a reminder of what had happened. You know, like traveling is fun, but if you get stuck somewhere, like one time I missed my plane. I was heading somewhere, and I was taking my time getting to the airport. I'm like, they're not going to leave without me. They'll do a head count. They'll see I'm not there, like I'm the King of Managua. And they're going to say, hey, King of Managua's not here. We need to wait. So I get there. The plane was still there, but apparently you need 30 minutes of time before the plane leaves so they can put the luggage on the plane. Well, I got there probably like 10 minutes before the plane would leave. And when I got there, the words came out of her mouth. She's like, I'm sorry, you missed the plane. I go, is it still here? She's like, it's still here, but by the time they put the luggage and all that, they don't have time for that. I'm like, well, let me get on the plane and let the luggage go wherever it wants to. I don't care. It's all, you know, garbage in there anyway. I don't have anything fancy. So anyway, I missed the plane. And then she goes, I will reroute you. She said route, not route. I will reroute you through Kentucky. So I go, all right. So I ended up going through Kentucky. I stopped it for a bit, and then I switched planes, and then I ended up going home. But yeah, I ended up, I think it's the only time I missed a plane. You know, only time. I cut it short a few times, but I've never missed a plane. So yeah. And when I was younger, I was more fascinated with the airplane. Now I look out and I go, all right, can we get there already? You know, it's like I'm bored up here. You know, I want to see the plane really moving fast. You know, like when you're in a car and you're doing 100 on the highway and you can see the trees just, you know, going by you at the speed of sound. Well, when you're on a plane and you look down below, everything is moving like in slow motion. You feel like you're just barely moving, you know, slow motion. So, but that's the perception because you're so high up. But I remember when I was little, I would spend most of my time just looking out the window. And then I would go in the back where they had that extra door, and I would look out the window. It was fun times. And then the 747s back then had a row of bathrooms. Nowadays, I feel like everybody's watching you. You go to the bathroom, like, oh, they just went to the bathroom, and they time you. Like, how long has he been in there? He's been in there quite a while. What's he doing? You know, so I don't really use the airplane bathrooms unless I really have to, you know. And even then, I'll go in there quickly. I don't like touching things in there. It seems like, you know, a little bit disgusting. If I were the airline companies, I would have the Sky Maids and the Sky Butlers have a spray that pretty much, never mind 99.99% of everything gets killed on contact. I would have something that definitely kills 100% of everything. And I'd get in there, spray everything down once every, I don't know, hour, wipe it down with Bounty, and then, everybody can use it again. I'd hit the toilet, and then I'd wipe that down and have everything smelling fresh. They got that little rinky-dinky sink, very little water pressure. I don't know, and not only that, everything is so close together that I feel like I'm touching the sides of virus-filled sinks. Hot pursuit. So, but I like air travel. It's just like after 5 hours, I'm like, all right, can we land now? Imagine going to Australia. That is on my bucket list. I would love to see Australia. I'd love to see the Outback. And now that I've eaten the Vegemite, I think I can handle it. I think I can handle Australia. I said Australia originally, didn't I? That's what I wanted to say, Australia. I'd love to go there. I'd like to go through the Outback, box with some kangaroos, maybe a little bit. But ever since I've seen that movie, Awaken Fright, man, that's a weird movie. Weird movie. I went and saw that movie with the director of that movie. You know who that is, right? Look it up. You'll see what I'm talking about. So we went to a little theater with the director, and then once the movie was done, we were able to talk to the director. And it was a weird movie. Weird movie. Like a lot of weird stuff in that movie. They even had actual kangaroo hunting. Like real stuff, real footage. But there was a lot of strange, it's a strange movie. But the Outback was beautiful. It was like a very rugged terrain. That's where you need a nice Jeep. A couple of extra 10-gallon containers of diesel so you don't run out there. That's on the list. It's on the list. There's a lot of things on the list. Sometimes you don't get to finish the list. You expire before the list does. But I would like to visit Mount Everest. Not necessarily to climb it. I'm not looking, maybe I'll climb a little bit. 5,000 foot level, 8,000 foot, I can go up there. Take some video. I'm not interested in going to the top. Obviously, you have to, be a little crazy to do that. You need the oxygen tank, and so I'm interested in a little bit. Go to Nepal, northern Pakistan. Nepal makes great blankets. All right, maybe a nice jacket. So I'd like to do that. Japan. I'd like to visit Japan. Mount Fuji, that weird forest. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I'd like to visit that weird forest. There's got to be somebody in there doing something, right? What else? Great food in Japan. Love Japanese food. I like to go to China, but not your typical places in China. I just want to visit a Chinese forest. I have this fascination with Chinese forest. I think it'd be cool. I feel like Kwai Chang Caine would be in there. Kwai Chang Caine. Master Po, Master Khan. So that, and then I'd like to visit some extreme locations like northern Alaska, Barren, northern Alaska, the northernmost point of Finland or Norway. Either one. Norway's cool. The most eastern side of Russia. Back there where it's like the sister side of Alaska. You have the Barents Sea up there. I'd like to explore that area by myself. Have a bunch of nice cameras, 3 cameras, maybe 20 batteries, a charger with the solar thing, some food, you know, things like that. And I would love to go up there and, you know, not, you know, a week maybe, explore. There's a guy on YouTube, what's it called, the Outdoor Boys or something. He's kind of like a goofy looking, you know, got the glasses and everything, thin guy, very spindly, and he goes all over the place, beautiful videos. I appreciate his enthusiasm to explore. But yeah, he goes all over the place in Alaska mainly, and I love that channel. I love people like that in general, you know. I did not know anybody like that in real life. Most of my friends were pussies. Yeah, but they'll tell you themselves that they were. They still are. So I didn't have that style of person. I used to do those kind of things, not to that extreme, like go in Alaska and, you know, live there for a couple of weeks. But I would do things, but I did them on my own. Nobody wanted to come along. So that's a good channel. I love watching that channel. There's a few channels, you know. You go, let me see what's going on here. I'm a little bit thirsty right now. I wish I had a beverage. I could easily, you know, stop the camera, get a beverage, and come back and continue. Which I think I may do that. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. I'll be back in a flash. All right, I am back. Beverage, water and ice, the best. I love water and ice. You know, I grew up in a house where ice was not that common. My mother would open up the tap, as they say, the sink, let it run 10 seconds, 15, 20 seconds, whatever it was, let it run, and then we'd get nice cold water out, and then that was it. You know, you drank water without ice. Now I cannot drink water without ice. My water has to have ice. You know, and with these wimpy people with the, oh, I got a sore throat, I can't get a sore throat when I know you don't get a sore throat when you have ice water. You don't, okay? You have to get like mononucleosis, something like that. Strep throat. You know, ice does not cause you to have mononucleosis. And I eat the ice after, which not a good thing. So what happens is, not all the time, but you eat ice, get your teeth cold, and then you drink something warm, and you can crack the enamel. Yeah. So I have the scrubbing bubbles. Remember these commercials in the old days? We work extra hard so you don't have to. And then they'd go down the sink. Well, remember that guy? It says here, removes 100% of the soap scum. And up top, what does it say up top? I don't know if it focused, but it says kills 99.9% of viruses and bacteria. And then it says it kills COVID-19 virus on hard, non-porous surfaces. That's probably like a lawyer told him to put 99.9. It sounds like you get it all, but there's a little left over. And I think they do that in case you spray this, and then you end up getting sick, and then you say, well, you know what, I sprayed this, it said 100%, I got sick, I got an infection, you guys lied, I'm suing. So they leave a little gap there, and they say, okay, well, we kill 99.9. You still have a chance of getting sick. We don't kill everything, which is ridiculous. Of course, if I spray this on a surface, it should kill everything. What is there, one resistant one in there? One resistant cell? A bacteria, an amoeba, whatever, that's angry, and it just won't die with this. So that's got to be, some lawyer came up with that. They said never put 100%. You know, that way we can say, yeah, well, we didn't say we kill everything. You know, we come close, but we don't kill everything. So anyway, yeah, and you know, it's a bit misleading. They make it sound like if you have soap scum, and you, first of all, you should not let your bathtub or your shower accumulate soap scum. You know, maybe a tiny little haze, but not to the point where you need a chisel to get it off, because at that point this will not work. You need elbow grease and an SOS pad, many of them, you know. So I mean, this is a good product, but it only goes so far. After that point, elbow grease and an SOS pad, you need that. So nice, nice day today though. This week, we were gonna probably end up seeing 3 movies, but so Friday we went and we saw the Karate Kid Legends one. It was, you know, very nostalgic for me, you know, get to see something like that with Ralph Macchio. I actually knew Ralph Macchio before he became the Karate Kid, not in real life, but I'm talking about I knew of him from 8 is Enough. Remember, that was Abby's nephew or something. He came over, he had a cigarette going, you know. Well, tell him, this is who you picked to play like a tough kid, Ralph Macchio. No, anyway, he's like the easygoing, polite, you know, kid, not anybody you should fear. So anyway, he became the Karate Kid. I saw that, and then I saw the Legends one last Friday, this Friday that just passed. Similar plot as the original. I've said this before, but anyway, so I'm not going to dwell on that, but it was enjoyable. I liked it, or as we say, I liked it. Then the following that we saw yesterday, we saw the that Final Destination one. That one I'm a fan of, all of them. You know, it's a very interesting concept. You know, the butterfly effect. Boom, one thing hits another thing, and before you have this whole, you know, before you know, you have a whole chain of events that takes place, and then you end up getting killed. Nowadays, the special effects are so real that it's almost like they took real people and killed them for the movie. That's how good they look, the effects. So we saw that, and then tonight in the afternoon hours, we were planning on seeing Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise, right? And then we looked at the time on that, and it was almost 3 hours. It's like a 3-hour movie. And my wife was like, yeah, I got things to do, and then, you know, I was like, all right, we'll cancel it, we'll go on another night where we have more time. So we canceled it. So we didn't go. I'll say one thing though, when my kids were little, we used to go to a French restaurant a lot, sometimes weekly, but we used to go to a French restaurant, and there was a waitress there. Her name was Tammy, and Tammy was very good with kids. My kids loved her, you know, my kids loved her. She would show up at our table and she would come talk to us, and my daughter, you know, the older one, she was very excited to see her. They had a connection. And then one day we went and she wasn't there. And then we saw her again, and she goes, oh yeah, I get another job. And she told us where it was, but she goes, come by there, you know. But we didn't go by there because we just didn't go by. There was no reason. So then we stopped going. And a whole decade went by. 10 years went by. And I would still go through that place, but we never sat down to eat at that place. I don't know why, it just happened that way. And today, my wife says, oh, you know, let's go somewhere and eat. And I said, all right. So we started thinking of places. Then I mentioned that French place, and we ended up going there after 10 years. Great food. Great food. And now I think that we've gone, we broke the ice again. We'll probably start going again. I like the German place, the restaurants that have German food. Never knew what German food was up until like maybe 12 years ago. That, you hear that? Mama's boy. It's Mama's boy. Look how, you hear that? Rushing to get home and get a little kiss on the cheek from Mama. Right? So anyway, I didn't know what German food was, and then we saw actually something on television, and they were talking about German food, and I said to my bride, I said, you know what, let's find a German restaurant. And so we went to the one that they featured on this television show, and it's very like home style, this little restaurant, you know, very home style. Everything's tight, you know, you sit at a table, everything's like together. And amazing food. I'm pretty sure it's still in business. Just haven't been there in a long time. So we would go there and eat nice, you know, chicken. What was it called? Schnitzel. They had great sausages. Everything was very good. It's the kind of stuff, you know, like that sticks to the ribs, as they say. That kind of food. So then another time, we went to another German place by the airport, LAX, near there. Not exactly, you know, but like maybe within a couple of miles of the airport, and they had great food. So I've been a fan of, you know, German food ever since I gave it a shot. That's how it is. You have to try different cultures' food, or foods, because you don't know what you're missing, you know. I always talk about Indian food. I say, you know, I used to think, you know, from Indiana Jones that Indian food was like really, you know, gamey tasting and a lot of organ meat and eyeballs floating around, and that's not really the case. They make some really delicious food. Like, all their food is delicious. Tandoori chicken, chicken biryani, chicken curry, all of that, delicious. You know, and Japanese food I always thought was good. I never had any misconceptions about that. I thought that was good. Mexican food, man, I love Mexican food. Soul food, love soul food, Caribbean food. So soul food, had a friend who was from Belize, and one day I was with them, and it was around lunchtime, and he said, hey, let's go get some lunch. I said, sure. So he goes, I got a place, I'll show you. So I ended up going with him to a soul food place. And he said, I'll you know, order. It was a to-go place. You know, you ordered to go, and then there were tables outside you could sit and eat. And he ordered, because apparently I didn't know what all that stuff was. And I had it, and I was blown away. Delicious, really good, you know, flavor. So soul food. I like, you know, food, Louisiana, man, New Orleans, delicious, every restaurant there. Po' boy food, you know, the po' boy, love that stuff. Love Greek food. Trying to think, you know, not the obvious stuff. Who doesn't love pizza, you know, things like that. But trying to think of some unusual. You know, a lot of people, you know, I like liver and onions, or onions with liver. So I love that. Some people, they hear liver and they're like, but you know, in the 1950s and before, organ meat, especially liver, very popular in the US, very popular. You know, you cook it, mom, back then in the 1950s, moms would cook liver, and kids would eat it because they grew up eating it and they didn't find anything wrong with it. Now, if I tell something like my kids, hey, I'm making liver, they're like, ah, you know, and you got to get it from a young animal. I agree with that. Even chicken liver, pretty good. But saying all that, yes, I would eat that. I will not. I don't like lamb. Let's not get carried away. I don't want anybody to think that I'm a, you know, a lamb person. I do not like lamb at all. Big fat zero on the lamb. I think that that animal was not meant to be eaten. I think that those animals are more for like, I don't know, pets. You know, I'm not a fan of lamb meat at all. But now I said liver and all that, but I'll tell you this right now: if somebody came to me and said I have a nice ribeye, beef, Angus, 100% Angus, or Kobe or anything like that, I will take the beef any day of the year over the lamb. Yeah, just much better flavor. Everything about it, the aroma, everything, much better. Quiet nights or quiet days like this, I think, like I'm in the deep south and there's an old gas station by the side of the road and I'm the old timer sitting there on a rocking chair, just letting time go, just watching the cars go by, maybe listening to a little bit of George Jones music, having a little bit of Country Time Lemonade, listening to the radio in the background. Yeah, I just said, George Jones. Like that, Choices, George Jones, man. I don't know what we're gonna eat tonight. That's always a big thing, I think, you should come up with like 15 meals, right? And then have a schedule on the wall and have them written out every day of the week, what's going to be for dinner. That way you don't have to go through this, well, what are we going to have tonight, and get into this whole, discussion about what are we going to eat. Just have 15 different meals, and every 2 weeks you repeat. You can mix them up here and there, but I mean, just repeat. It doesn't have to be every Monday that you have steak, or every Wednesday you have spaghetti, or every Friday that you have fish or something like that. You can mix that all up, but there should be 15 meals that you know about, that you can cook, and that you keep altering. Anyway, that's it for now. Ciao.